The attendees automatically come through.
Yeah.
You're live. Good morning. I think people are just slowly coming into the room. Give it a minute or so before we properly kick off. Apologies for the late start. Yoga was on before us. And our panelists very kindly have offered to show their favorite yoga poses at the end of the session. So we're really looking forward to seeing that, gentlemen. Matt is particularly good at yoga.
Downward dog's my favorite.
Downward dog is his favorite. So yeah, we're and he's been teaching me some of that, haven't you?
Yep.
Yeah,
that's a horrific image, isn't it? After doing yoga,
it really is. Welcome to the Love Through Loss panel event. This is our session is around Dad's Grieve 2.
Yep.
My name's Liam Preston, and this is
my name's Matt Dearsley,
and we are the hosts of the Dad's Still Standing podcast. It's a podcast all about baby loss. It's a toolkit for dads to help them through the process of grieving and what happens after the loss of a child. And Matt and I started the podcast up because we, as I'm sure some other people will have been through the same thing, we had lost children and had nowhere to turn. So there was no kind of support out there for dads. And so we said, well, actually, why don't we do a podcast?
Do something
that positively helps dads through that process. We've got a fantastic panel today. So on our panel, we have Azim Rafiq, English cricketer, absolute legend, superstar. So Azim, thank you for joining us. And I'll get each of you to kind of introduce your story and your personal connection with baby loss in a second. We have Dean Munro, author of Monty's First Christmas. And I'm sure you're going to talk about that, Dean, as well. And we have Dr. James Hurley, who's a clinical psychologist. I almost said something else there. And James is going to talk us through kind of that side of baby loss as well from a clinical perspective. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. It's often a difficult subject for men to talk about. So any panel where we're able to get people on and talk and share their stories is really, really appreciated. But Dean, we've met before, so we've done something like this similarly. So do you want to kick off and just give us a little introduction to kind of your experience of loss? And then we'll delve into it more, I suppose, as the questions go on.
Perfect. Yeah, again, good to see you. Thank you for having me back on the show here. My name's Dean. I live in Dubai, and I lost my son, Monty, at 10 weeks old. Out here, obviously, the run up to the pregnancy, everything we thought was fine. We weren't aware of any or being told of anything. And then obviously when he was born, he was put onto a life support machine, of which he stayed on for his sort of 10-week lifespan. Obviously during that 10 weeks, me and my wife went through a hell of a lot, and we sort of tried to come out the other side best we can by dealing with it how we did, by talking to people, helping with each other. But the key thing for me was that every night I used to sit there and read Monty a story. Every night I just sit there reading books. Then one day I just said, you know what, I'm going to write books about him. And then after he passed away, I just ended up writing, but within, leaving school with no GCSEs, no qualifications, could hardly read or write myself, I wrote 6 books that have all been based on him. The first one was published, I think, 2 years ago, and we've got another one coming out, which will be April next year.
Amazing. Incredible. Thank you, Dean. Thanks for sharing that. Azim, this will be a side of you that many people don't know. Talk us through your experience.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Nice to meet you all. I think, look, myself and my wife, around 2017, we went through a pretty difficult pregnancy, and I think people have heard bits of it, and but not in its entirety. It went through a really difficult pregnancy, had different irregular heartbeat through it, and we were visiting hospital quite a lot, but then we got to around the 34th week, and that became normal. Then my wife got preeclampsia, and we were just getting ready for my boy to come into the world, and she'd had the baby shower, got the nursery and everything set up. And you know, it's not something you really think of. And I was at a cricket match and got the phone call that you know, that no longer a heartbeat in the 38th week. And you know, I just remember from the minute of getting that phone call to you know, to this day really. But that sort of period, because it took, you know, it took 5 days to get the baby out, which you know, I saw myself, which was pretty difficult and challenging. And it's a trauma that's, you know, that's there, the after effect, you know. How do you sort of look after yourself while looking after your wife, and the rest of the family? And you know, as we do as men, I had to take that role at the time of, you know, there was no choice but to neglect myself, because you know, my wife and what she was going through at the time was, you know, not something that I can ever even imagine. So it was, you know, I had to make sure I was there as support. But you know, when I needed support in that, even if it was for 10 minutes a day, it just wasn't there. And I just remember one of the first conversations with the doctor after, around some of the questions that we had, and she just turned around and said, "It's her baby. I need to speak to her." And you know, that's left a big, you know, language is very important, especially in crucial times, and that's just left a big mark there. Everything else that was going on, you know, with it around my workplace and everything, I think it's pretty public, but that's not for today.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and I've sort of made it just felt like it was so important to try and use our voices wherever it is to try and you know, change that, because you know, it was my baby as well. And that I did some of the, you know, I carried him from the hospital to the graveyard, and that, you know, that's something that I need support with and help with. And you know, more organizations like Love Through Loss, you know, hopefully that we can get to a point where we create a community and you realize actually how many dads feel exactly the same.
Absolutely. And
Thanks, Lee.
I always want to say doctor, because I know how hard it is to become a doctor. So I don't want to do you a disservice, James, by just calling you James. Dr. James, what works for you?
Doc?
Please call me James.
James.
Thank
what's kind of your experience within this world?
Lovely to meet you guys. Love the podcast, lads, and just a real honor for me to be here today. So I'm James Hurley, born and reared in Ireland. Spent 10 years in the UK learning my trade, and I've been living in Dubai for nearly 3 years now. And I've worked with people who've experienced loss, bereavement, and grief throughout all walks of life, all ages. And yeah, just here today to be a part of this panel and offer any kind of helpful insights from my experience as needed.
And I think what's come through is, I mean, so my story is very similar to yours, Azim. So we lost our baby in labour at 40 weeks. So you know, and I've felt that similar kind of difference between what your experience is with between your partner and yourself. And Matt, you guys have suffered a number of miscarriages.
I'm laughing, it's not funny, but I've suffered, so I've lost five babies in the last 6 years, various stages. So first loss was, I've got a daughter, Lily, she's 7. We lost her twin, that was an ectopic pregnancy. And again, it's interesting, as you say about language is so important. We had a doctor turn around to us once they'd done emergency surgery on my wife to remove the ectopic pregnancy, and basically said, "Don't hold your breath about the one that's in there." Like we were 3 months into the pregnancy then. I spent the next 6 months shitting myself, for want of a better word, that we were going to lose Lily. We didn't. You've met Lily. Yeah. There was no way she was not coming out. She's headstrong. She's sassy. Then following that, we lost Harry at about 16 weeks. That was termed as a late miscarriage, which again, I hate that phrase, because it I think it's doesn't quite portray the story. So we had to deliver Harry. My wife had to give birth to Harry. Again, there was quite a lot of trauma around that birth. Almost lost my wife during the birth. Had an emergency situation where I had to hit a buzzer on a room, and I describe it in my story on a podcast. I was back against the wall. My wife was surrounded by loads of medical people, and I was thinking, oh my God, like I've come into hospital to give birth to a baby that's, not coming home with me, and I'm not going to come home with my wife. Then literally a year, 18 months later, exactly the same circumstances, with my daughter Daisy, late-term miscarriage, same hospital, same room, same doctors. It was, a bit like being stuck in the twilight zone. And then we had a loss during COVID that was sort of 8 weeks, just a 8 weeks miscarriage again. There were lots of issues around that with COVID. I wasn't allowed into the hospital with her, and I was actually on the phone too, wasn't I? I was video calling you at 3 o'clock in the morning from Chelmsford Hospital car park, just chatting crap, just to try and get through the fact that my wife was in hospital losing the baby and I couldn't be with her. And then we had almost the same circumstances last year. We knew my wife was pregnant. She went for a scan, couldn't find a heartbeat. Then got told, we don't think there's a pregnancy there. Then had to go for lots of blood tests to be told, oh no, there is a pregnancy, but it's not viable. You need to take this tablet to terminate it. And again, it's kind of I kind of feel like my baby loss journey is an ongoing one. It feels like you get over one and then another one comes and hits you in the face. So yeah, I mean, it's just there's no other way of describing baby loss for mums and dads, but it's just crap. It's the worst thing in the world. And for some reason, men seem more reluctant to talk about it than women, and people seem more reluctant to talk about it with men than women. And there's something I find, I'm quite open about my losses. I'll be sitting talking to men and they'll be like, oh, I can't talk about this. I don't want to talk to you about this. Like, this is, ultra emotive, isn't it?
It is. I'm trying to think for you, both you gents, what support do you think you needed after the loss of your children that wasn't there? Because I think when Matt and I talk about on the podcast, we often talk about like that. I mean, there's not a huge amount there for mums, but there is much more than there is for dads. And I just wondered, like, what specific support do you think would have benefited both of you?
I think for me now, like, obviously, since I've spoken out about my cricketing experiences, a lot, and then within that I spoke about losing my baby, and only then I've realized that there's actually charities that are actually quite big. So which I didn't even I think I remember there was a nurse that was sort of in charge, to a bereavement nurse that was in charge, but then she her shift finished and then she went on holiday and she then passed it on to someone else, and within that I didn't get any information. I didn't have anything to know where to go to or what, and it was as if like I was trying to do all that myself. I had a very similar situation. It took 5 days. We were told it'll take a couple of doses. It ended up taking 12 doses to get the baby out. Within that, there was a period where my wife's temperature was like going, and I thought, God, I'm going to lose my wife here as well. And so the panic, I was in absolute panic, not knowing really what's going on, but then trying to keep it all together, because if I wasn't going to be, outwardly calm, then it makes everyone else panic as well. So that or within all that, it would have just been nice to have someone to be able to talk certain things through, and help make certain decisions. Like, so we, again, hospital arranged through someone who had lost a baby before. I think they've donated like a cameraman to take photos and stuff. Now, again, that process wasn't really explained, and that just took place. And it was only when the photos came that we realized that the photos were in black and white, and not actually, we would have preferred them in color.
Right.
So, it's, I guess, in a way, having someone there that you can talk it through, help make some decisions, because all the decisions feel like all the onus and the pressure of everything seems, well, it comes on yourself. And just having someone hold your hand through that process, it would have been massive for me, and that, you know, and then I think after it, just the practical support, and this is what I, you know, hopefully will be able to do with the platform I have moving forward, is actually there is, like, you go through the phase of you want someone to understand that, but then you get through the phase where you don't want sympathy. You want some practical answers. You want some practical, you know, like my workplace situation. I needed practical support there, and again, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do this or not, but, you know, want to try and get to a place where actually, you know, there is better workplace support in place, even to the point where, you know, if you need to take time off and it's fully paid, that sort of thing would have been, I think, would have just taken one normal pressure of life off at a time where you're under the most immense, you know, I've got massive fear of losing my parents. You know, it's my biggest fear. Until I lost my son, I thought that was the ultimate. And now these two things are the most ultimate things I think anyone can go through in life. And if around that time there can be someone holding your hand through it, and that practical support from a workplace point of view, I think would have helped me through that period, and then the recovery, because you know, it's never something that leaves you. You just get to a point, and, you know, where you deal with it a little bit better. I think, again, talking about it has been a huge part of that for me in my recovery.
Yeah, no, I resonate with what you said so much, to be honest. And I agree with regards to you need someone holding your hand, because you know you're in pieces, aren't you? And you're trying to put yourself together, and it's impossible to do that. So, I mean, Dean, what support? Because your story is slightly different to ours, obviously. What support did you sort of feel was missing, or did you feel you needed when you were going through it?
You know, it's a difficult one, because being out here during COVID, I had no family that could fly out to see me, and that was always the hardest part. That was the bit that cut the deepest, was that no one got to meet him. You know, had it have been now, you know, I was on a discussion yesterday about how they're dealing with palliative care out here in Dubai. Now, people, as long as you get permission, can come. That was a big thing for me, is that nobody actually physically got to see him, apart from me, my wife, and my daughter once. Support-wise, there wasn't, and, you know, I have my friends and my family who I talk to daily. Like, I'm talking everyone I speak to daily, going in, checking in, I'm sending videos of him, but there was nothing. There was nothing for me to reach out to. Did I feel like I could reach out to somebody at that point in my life? Probably not, because I didn't think anybody would know what I was going through. I firmly believe that what I want to do now is to try and teach people that, you know, I say this all the time, but at school we're taught, as you get older, your grandparents are going to die, your parents are going to die, your aunties and uncles. Not once does any point of growing up do they mention if you lose a child. And that, to me, is the worst thing a human can physically go through, a parent can go through. I don't care what else is in this world, but that is the worst thing. And I think more needs to be done to not only have the support, but to also let people know what does happen, and how people have dealt with these sort of things, and come out the other side. But yeah, from my side, it was, you know, lucky I had my wife, but like Azim says there, I had to be the strong one. Do you know what I mean? I had my wife and my daughter, and if I crumbled, who's there for them to? Do you know what I mean? I remember this day, I'd get in the car, when I was having a tough day, I'd put on Linkin Park or something like that.
We talk about it all the time.
As I could in that car, and I would drive fast, and I would be angry. I wouldn't be angry, but I'd be angry that this is happening to me. So many people could have gone a different way, and a lot of people do. And if you go, I think, into a dark place, which is so easy to happen under the circumstances, I think a lot of people struggle to get out of it.
And James, in your role, do you get many men coming to you presenting and talking about these types of things, or does that happen often? Because I wonder about, like, in terms of reaching out for support, how often it gets to you exhaust your friends, and then you exhaust anybody else who listen. And I wonder, at what stage do you go, actually, I might need some, like, proper help with this? And does that happen? Do people come to you often?
I wouldn't say often.
Yeah.
I've had the privilege of supporting men with loss in the past, but it wouldn't feature as a high percentage of the people that I would see professionally. No, but in my personal life, would have more contact again. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
There's I think there's loads of reasons, but in general, we do know the data do show that men, in very general terms across the board in the UK and across other countries, access mental health services at a lower rate than women do. Whereas we understand that there is just as much need across both genders, perhaps even more so for specific groups of men who might be at more risk.
Hmm. Do you think, so just on that point, do you think men wait longer to access mental health services? So for example, I've got friends that have lost, and the dad hasn't accessed any mental health services because he doesn't feel he needs to, which is fine. Whereas the mum has accessed mental health services a lot earlier and probably before she's displayed any signs that actually she's suffering. So, for example, when I got help, and as Dean said, I was in a horrible place. Sort of, I was in a really, really dark place, and I waited until I was like, I'm either going to go and jump off a cliff or I'm going to go and get some mental help.
Yeah.
Do you think men wait until they're at that point to do it, or do you,
crisis point,
at crisis point before they seek help?
In general, we do tend to see delays with seeking help, and I think a general reluctance with seeking help, because unfortunately, some of the old cultural traits are still alive and kicking, and men and boys are expected to be a bit more stoic, to not express if they're really genuinely struggling with something, and to kind of to mind themselves, and we do see these kind of cultural ideas across lots of different parts of the world bearing out in the data, in the uptake for mental health support services. Yeah.
It's that big boys don't cry, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think on that as well, we sort of we're living in some crazy times with you know, I think there's a lot of places that'll make it look like that things have changed from in terms of men wanting to speak, and I'm sure things have got a little bit better, but there is still very much a stigma around what is perceived as weakness, but actually I think the more we can take this conversation around mental health around men towards actually how strong it is, to be able to share your feelings from a young age. And that's where education comes in, because I think, unfortunately with social media and so-called influencers of this world, that is still very much trying to bring men up in a way that we have this perceived chest out, pump out, and that's strong. Well, actually, quite the opposite. Being able to sit and speak, like you say, when you talk about baby loss in normal conversations, you can tell people get so uncomfortable with it, within a men's group. And actually, we need to get to a point where, from a very young age, that sharing feelings is strong. It's actually a strength, and that's I'm not an expert, but from my experiences of I've struggled with my mental health from 2013, been on antidepressants, hit absolute crisis points. Nearly jumped off my balcony, literally got to the end and back, and it's a journey that you're living through life. But again, since I've spoken out around my experiences around cricket and the one thing that consistently helps me be able to navigate the journey up and down is being able to speak to people. And actually, when you do, you realize how many other people are feeling the same, and the support that there is out there. I've had all sorts of different therapy, and some have worked, some haven't. And you get I feel lucky to have got to a point where I've connected with someone that really helps me, and she's built my confidence up to realize actually that I won't spiral. I can manage them feelings. And she left me with a quote which on my when I'm sort of feel like I'm struggling a little bit is, life is imperfect, enjoy the imperfections of life. And just from a pure mental health point of view, that's really helped me. And I think as men, we need to get to a point where in our education systems that, you know, it's actually quite strong to speak about our feelings, whatever they may be.
Thank you. There's a couple of things I want to pick out of that. The first is obviously we've got a number of people who are listening in to our conversation that we're having. So if you do have any questions, pop them in the Q&A and we'll try and filter them into the discussion as well. And I'm really keen, Dean, to hear kind of your experiences. I think moving the conversation on to kind of what the difference was like, if you're both okay talking about it, between what grieving was like for your partners and you, and how that dynamic worked, and what differences between kind of mums and dads were, and how that affected you. But something before I move on to that, I've done that thing where I ask about 8 questions in one. Matt hates it when I do this.
Does this a lot.
All the time.
He goes off on a ramble and
Yeah,
just gets
yeah.
his brain going. He's like,
Yeah.
It's infuriating, I'll be honest. It's infuriating.
No. So the question I did have was, Azim, you said something which was really interesting, which was that men and boys, we aren't taught this at a younger age, about kind of opening up and talking about your feelings. And what it made me think about was, Dean, in your books that you've done, have you thought about or included stories that try and bring this idea about talking about feelings at a younger age, so that, you know, we're using this platform to try and reach that generation to say it's okay and as a subject matter?
Yeah, I've actually been contemplating and putting a few notes down to actually write almost like a journal of a journey of how it went from start to probably to where I am at a point now. As I say, this point is it's never going to end. The point's going to continue for as long as I'm breathing. But it's something which I'm probably very close to doing. And I think next year I will probably have something in place where it's a journey of what I went through, how I coped, all the hurdles that, you know, we had to jump over, all the treatments, the tests. There's so I literally could write a book about it, and I will. And that is gonna. I think within the next 6 months you'll see something coming out about, for me, from a man, from how it affected me.
He's got another book deal, hasn't he? Look, if he can't talk about it, the publicist won't let him talk about it. He's got something lined up. Look at the smile on his face.
This for a long time, and it's just, obviously, like I said, I struggle to read and write myself, but, you know, just putting it down into words occasionally. I've got a book at home which I just keep adding stuff to, but something like that is definitely needed, and I think it will be purely just to raise awareness of others.
I was more asking the question of, like, filtering that through into your children's books and stuff. Is that, like, do you think it's an area where you'd want to explore at all?
I mean, the books themselves were written about Monty and stuff he would have got up to in life.
Okay,
so that basically things about, like, I mean, the next one is Monty's first day at school, which actually was about him, was about one of the boys who was lying next to him in an incubator. So I don't think I'll be able to
weave it in, like.
Say they've all been written. They're all rhyming stories. They all sort of rhyme from start to finish. I don't think I'll be able to incorporate it as such into those stories.
That's cool. So then, thinking about, like, going back to this question around, like, differences in the home, was it difficult? Because I've talked about it on ours, I think, where it was like the difference between, like, my wife not seeing me, the grief I was having, because I was doing quite similar to you. I was going off for driving. We both spoke about crying in cars.
You grieve in private, the man, don't you?
Yeah, I just wonder if that was an experience that either of you two had been through. And then I got moving to you, I suppose, in a bit, James. Is this something that people display when they do talk about it?
I mean, I definitely feel, you know, as a woman, for her, it was a lot harder. I remember one time, actually, we maybe had an argument over something, and she said, "I've never even seen you cry," and I was like, "Fuck!" Like, felt a bit like, you know, do I need to show more emotion? Am I doing the wrong thing now? And that, I remember that like it was yesterday. I remember exactly where we were in the car when she turned around and said that to me, and that hurt a bit, that because I was a bit like, what do you mean? And I could have really bitten. I could have you know, turned that around and been like, you know, that could have ended up in a very big argument. But I just, you know, I just went about to just be there, and all I kept thinking was her and my daughter, her and my daughter, her and my daughter, keep it together. But for her, yeah, I mean, she was definitely, you know, a lot more emotional than me, as you would expect. You know, she felt responsible sometimes as well, which was difficult for me to try and say it's nothing to do with you. This is absolutely, this could have happened to anybody in the world. So obviously having to deal with that at the same time was tough. But yeah, it was, from my side, I'd done it. Towards the end, I was more fine to sit on the sofa and just, you know, have a breakdown in front of her. That wasn't an issue.
Yeah. Azim, was it difficult for you? Was there differences between you and your partner?
Yeah, very challenging actually, and I think this is where the cultural aspects as well. Like, my wife, you know, she showed a lot of emotion, a lot of extreme emotions, you know, around the time, you know, smashing up things. You know, it was regular, and like, you know, even that she was going to drink bleach and things like that. And I found that really, really challenging. And you know, I needed to be there for her. I did a lot of mine. I just cried while I was driving. That's where I got it out. And, you know, there is times that you know, I feel a little bit similar to what Dean just said, like, um, actually, you know, there's might not be as much of an understanding of what I am going through, and I think that might be because of what the doctor said that's left it with me, or just generally that no one asks a father, how are you? Are you all right? Is there anything?
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do for you? You know, we're expected to just sort of carry on, and I think, but our journeys have been very, very different. So she had a lot of, you know, as I said, extreme emotions at the start, and then she's just gone like sort of closed, no, doesn't talk about it ever really. You know, it'd be the, you know, we're very, now we've got two kids, and sometimes on sort of big days and stuff, you know, she'll just say, oh, I really miss Alian. But apart from that, you know, she really doesn't talk about it at all. And I'm completely the opposite sort of, really. I've more or less, you know, got a platform where I get to share it, and I want to share it because I feel like I've just had it bottled up inside me for, you know, for so long, and I feel like our journeys are just complete opposites. Where I'm sure she still, you know, feels it and stuff, but doesn't really show it and stuff. Whereas I'm trying to sort of, you know, deal with it, and I still feel like I'm in that cycle from the time, and you know, there's still times that I'm you know, our lives have just not, well, they haven't, we haven't had a continued period of calmness in our lives since then, because you know, I ended up speaking out, and then we've moved countries, and so we've just sort of been on the go a little bit, and I guess been handling it in our own self. But you know, it's not for everyone to sit and talk about it openly, but you know, I hope we get to a point where we can talk to each other about it, and you know, specifically around that time, and you know, that would be a great place to get to, for her as well, and for me to feel like she's, you know, she's sort of, you know, learned to live with it. And you know, we've started telling our, you know, kids about it, about Alian as well, which is very, very important to us.
And James, is it in the sessions you're having with clients and patients, is this something that's displayed where there is this big difference between how men and women talk about it, and the feeling that men aren't grieving by their partners?
There can be some differences, but in the clinic room, because individual differences are much greater than gender differences, it tends to be a unique story each time, and you might draw some kind of very broad parallels across people who identify as men and women, but generally in the clinic, the stories are highly individual, very personal, and you know, they could go any way, but really interesting to hear. And I'm just really grateful to bear witness to your stories, guys. But it's you know, picking up on a theme here, it seems like we were all conditioned to express our vulnerability privately, right? Crying in the car, And what I really liked about both of your stories, Dean and Azim, is although yes, there's media, culture, societal rules and expectations, and all of that conditions boys and girls, right? This is learned behavior. And Dean, you mentioned kind of feeling it feeling difficult for you at the beginning to kind of express how you were feeling, and your partner saying that, and towards the end you unlearned that because you felt that was valuable, and for you guys to connect in that way. So anything that we do learn can be unlearned. It takes a bit of awareness and a bit of practice, but it can be unlearned, and I find that really hopeful.
Oh, he speaks with such confidence, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Oh, for the authority of a doctor in the room, I love it.
He's got a better looking version of you, actually.
Okay, let's move on to another question from the audience. So, Azim, I think you said you'd be interested in asking this one, and Dean, I'm not sure if you have, but like, someone's asked, could we also talk about having children after loss and how that impacts fatherhood? We've got about 15 minutes left, and I think we're trying to get through some of these questions. But Azim, did you want to comment on this one specifically?
Yeah. I mean, look, my wife got pregnant, and then the pregnancy was just we were nervous wreck, as put it earlier. Absolutely, we literally were ending up at hospital, 2-3 times a day, like literally going there, feeling something, running again, coming. And we also changed hospitals because we didn't feel that the care was right during the first one. So, and again, I think that was like a subconscious decision, in a bit of, I think, protecting ourselves, as well as I think, I don't know if this comes from a bit from being in a professional sporting environment, but where you have bad memories, you sort of just go away from that and try and start again type thing. And so we changed the hospital, so now we were 40 minutes away as opposed to being 2 minutes away. And then just a panic throughout was just really panicky. And then when the baby, it was 4:30, rush hour, raining, winter, raining in July, not winter. And I had a decision to make, and then my wife started bleeding, and I was like, oh God, what do I do? And my midwife's like, get to the closest hospital. In my head, I'm like, I don't want to. And that whole pressure came on me, and I made a decision at that point to go to the Sheffield one. And then we had the baby. And it's for me, in terms of fatherhood, I just remember the first few weeks I literally couldn't sleep. I was watching him, in the cot, just like, for me, like the first, I am the first one after the one we lost. I've just not been able to keep eye off, and that fear, the fear of losing a baby and having gone through it was has impacted fatherhood, absolutely. We've had a girl since as well, and I actually, it's impacted for me, I think, in a positive manner, that there is nothing that means more to me than my kids, because I got to the absolute ultimates of everything, really. There was a period where I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to buy milk. So I faced the ultimate challenges because of my workplace and stuff. So I just knew that I would do everything to protect my kids, and nothing comes in front of that, because actually what that period showed me is how little we need to be able to be happy, and actually how resilient I am in making sure that I find a way. So for me, it really, I hope it's given me more time than most parents, most fathers have with their kids as well, because of everything that's been going on through their early ages. And that's something I'm actually very thankful for. And one of the biggest things that got us through this phase has been, our religion teaches us, if you lose a child, that on the day of judgment, that the child will hold your hand and fight with Allah, and open the doors to heaven for you. So that's been something that that's really helped us from a spiritual and a mental health point of view, to really go, you know what, we'll be fine, because everything happens for a reason. So But yeah, fatherhood question. It's I don't know what I'd have been like without it. But I just feel like I'm hopefully a much better father because of having gone through that experience.
Thanks, Azim. There's a couple more questions I want us to get through. Is there a way hospitals could incorporate bereavement care for husbands/men specifically to talk about their feelings, at least to direct us towards how we can process loss in the beginning? And I think we've all sort of spoken about how it takes almost a bit of a while for it to kick in, us needing to do something. James or Dean, either of you, is there anything you think that in that immediate moment that hospitals could be doing more?
Yes, I think would be the short answer. And you guys have mentioned this, and it's been borne out over and over again. When somebody is going through something as extreme as a loss like that, confusion is going to amplify the distress that causes. So you need somebody, you mentioned, kind of to hold your hand, or you need somebody to guide you. And the whole family does. I think there's a wonderful opportunity there for a role. So the bereavement nurse, that it seemed like there were a few unfortunate incidents there where things were dropped, and that's really unfortunate. But the families are there. There's a team of medics around them. It seems like a fantastic opportunity for someone else to be referred. It doesn't need to be a big, huge piece of work or a big cost implication for the hospitals, because of course that's what it always comes back to. But if there is somebody there who's aware of local resources, who does a bit of explanation, a bit of information sharing, puts some written information into the hands of the parents, so that and of course they'll just fold it up, absolutely put it in their pocket, but they will look at it at a certain point, and it just shows the next steps for them in terms of accessing whatever practical or emotional support that is available in the hospital, or indeed going to voluntary sectors or anything else that's in the community, because there usually is a fair amount, but none of us know about it. So having somebody with kind of a signposting checklist, I think, would be a really helpful thing for hospital services to keep in mind. What do you reckon, Dean?
Yeah, I just echo really what was said there. It's something that I think, even if you channel people towards podcasts and things that people can listen, or even sometimes just to listen. Maybe they don't even need to talk. They can just have a listen. Listen to this. Like you say, a leaflet there with. We're not saying because you don't know what stage they could be at with their child. If it's the child could be getting better, but either way, you're in that environment where there's an illness or something that's you're going through that loss. So again, even for people to be able to listen to someone else's story, I think would impact them.
That's a really good point, because one of the questions that has also been asked is around what does good peer-to-peer support look like? So what does dads talking to dads support look like? I think that's something that's hard to deliver. And one of the questions is, like, we've seen online stuff, Facebook groups. I remember joining some of them after the loss, but never really. I think I see it, and I just wonder whether you guys had any advice on what peer-to-peer support would look like, and dads-to-dad support. Or if you've got anything,
I've got something on this actually. Yeah, so I think the key with dad-to-dad support and men talking around men is, I think the last thing you want to do as a man, feeling at your lowest point, going to seek support from other men, is to go into a meeting with other men and come out feeling worse than you did when you went in. And that's kind of a crux of our podcast, is that we want men to listen to it when they're in their darkest hour, right? And we want them to pick up the podcast, listen to it, and go, actually, do you know what? I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get through this. And I think that's, I went to some stuff that was, designed for support, and it wasn't necessarily aimed at dads. And sometimes I'd come out feeling worse than when I went in. I don't think that's constructive. I don't think that's helpful. So I think it has to be in the right tone, if that makes sense, for that support between peers. It can't be, we all want to talk about our stories, but I think we have to use each of our stories to build each other up, rather than break each other down and not get into this, get into this competition about my grief is worse than yours. I've had more losses than you, therefore I'm grieving harder than you are. I think that can, that can turn into a little bit of a toxic environment. So.
I also
Definitely.
we're gonna have to wrap this up. But I also think there's a really classic thing around just men in general, and like I have this conversation with my wife. Men don't just meet up to talk, even if it's just your mates. You meet up around an activity. So whether it's playing cricket or going to the pub, or you're always doing something.
Yeah.
And I find that if I was going to do something where I was going to meet up with other dads, I'd do it over a curry. Or going like, men have to do an activity in order to talk about stuff together. And I think that's, so I think if you're looking to do stuff, I would focus it around.
I think as well, just to finish off on that, in terms of hospitals and bereavement, like for me, there's always a nurse. Nurse is always a lady. If there was, if there is a male nurse, that again would have helped me, I think, because and even I'd go further, and I think Lala does this through Love Through Loss. It's actually if it was someone with lived experience that actually was there to hold your hand through, I would be more receptive in listening, because my emotions are everywhere. I don't know what I'm thinking, what's going on. And the last thing I want to feel like is the person that's supposedly there to support me is not even listening to me. And I think that's where it goes to the peer-to-peer support and what's just been mentioned. Actually, everyone is on their own journey. Everyone is at a different stage. So just a big, because I've seen it, and not just around this subject, around subjects, because people do, different people come out of situations in different situations, different ways. And then some can be very sort of, oh, if I can do it, you can do it. Well, actually, that doesn't work like that. And that can be so toxic and so down, bringing you down, especially if you're not ready to come out of it. Grief and whatever things are, everyone takes their time and handles things in a different way. So it's just so important that all sorts of this support are very human led, and led from a person that understands what stage the grief process is at, because actually sometimes trying to these things going wrong and not done properly can have more damage than actually not do.
Couldn't agree more.
We're gonna have to wrap up there. So Azim, Dean, James, Matt, thank you so much for obviously sharing your stories today and your experience of baby loss. Hopefully all of us can stay in touch outside of this. Big love to the Love Through Loss support for organising this. It's really great to have dad sessions as part of it, and the experience of us sharing how we feel with the group is amazing. There's lots of other stuff taking place for the rest of the day, and I think on Sunday as well. So make sure you check out the Love Through Loss support website for all of those details. But gents, it's been an absolute honour and a privilege to share this space with you. Let's stay in touch, and definitely. Good luck and take care.
Thanks,
Cheers.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.